The DJ accepts no responsibility for the next record.
Say what? Oh no, he said. Where's the money, man? Where's my money?
It's time to man up, America.
Let's do this.
Television right here in Cleveland, Tennessee. I know you're waiting for video. It's coming. Boom! There it is. Video in the house. I've got Dr. BS and Curt is back in action in the studio. What up with that? That's awesome. Curt, we're glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Here on The Man Up America.
Glad to be back.
It's been a while. And Rob was supposed to be here today, but I don't know where he is. I think hold on, I believe we're distorting audio. Let's back this down just a little bit. Sorry, Facebook land. We'll get the audio fixed. As you know, we kind of have been in a technical disarray for the past week. We completely lost yesterday's show. I do apologize to all our super fans out there online. We lost yesterday's program. It was a magnificent program with Double A and Monty and myself, and only we will ever know just how glorious it was.
I think we had one of those
days too. I got to see 15 minutes of it.
What now?
I got to see 15 minutes.
Yeah, the first 15 minutes was live, so Bruce, you tune in to watch the first 15, and then we have some super fans that do as well. So thank you to those of you who can tolerate it as we kind of get things adjusted and in here. So obviously, Curt and Dr. BS are with us today. They're going to heal the world and make it a better place here on Man Up America. Maybe.
Or
no,
just
maybe he's
cause
not
more
here.
of a divide.
Maybe he's not here today. Maybe he's not here.
We've got a spot for him.
I'm anticipating a lot of cottonmouth. I have 2 beverages.
I'm chewing gum if you hear.
You're chewing gum.
If you
brought
that.
truffles. I saw that you brought truffles there.
I ate a truffle, so you know.
They're delicious. Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Today is Valentine's, so let's get the formalities out of the way. It is Valentine's Day, and we love you all.
We do.
Okay? We know it's a holiday that has been established by corporate America to sell more chocolates and flowers. I get it.
That's what every dude says.
But I'm okay with a day that encourages me to formalize my appreciation to my significant other. Mm-hmm. And in my family, we do more than just give Valentines to the ones whom we have an intimate romantic relationship with. Mm-hmm. I give Valentines to my children. And today is also shout out to my mother. It's her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So my very first Valentine was Mama. She's a brutal, brutal lady.
Hopefully she doesn't have Wi-Fi.
Who has contributed to the most callous elements of my personality. And so for those of you who really, really despise me, blame Mama. And she was born on this day. She was born on this day, 1966.
I am always shocked by things that you say.
What? It's true. My mother's a tough cookie.
So
my dad's
Mama
the clown.
And you throw
Mama's
the date out
cookie.
there, so now we can expect that Adam may not be here Tuesday.
Oh, my mother's never been one to, as far as age. She's not scared of growing old.
Yeah.
She loves the idea of being grandma and being great-grandma. You know, that's kind of her thing. She longs for that day. So happy birthday to Mom. Happy Valentine's Day to my children, to my beautiful wife, Rachel Lowe, to the other people in my life who I love you so dearly, including all the super fans out there.
Yes.
And a special shout out to the deep, deep, compassionate love that I have for maybe Rob Alderman, even when he's not here.
He's here in spirit. Wait,
here in spirit.
Didn't he say he's floating?
We did put. He's floating above
floating
America.
today.
We
Yeah.
put up a chair to honor his existence, albeit not on the show.
Just
I
in
have a
case he
theory.
comes in late.
Yeah, I have a theory that Rob was supposed to be on the show today, and based on our pre-discussion thread on the face
chickened
pages,
out.
he's like, I'm not going in on that. It's too sensitive right now.
We've been arguing for an hour on Facebook.
Well,
this morning.
yeah, for those
It
who-
started last night.
We talk about it on occasion, but we have as collaborators on the show, all the contributors, this
In a
private
group chat.
this group chat
Don't
thread
glorify it.
that is much more entertaining than this show will ever be. All right, because
No
it's private.
screenshots allowed.
I don't know about
No
that.
screenshot. We need to move it to Snapchat, I suppose,
Oh,
so we can
man.
make sure that we're good stewards
Pretty
of
sure we'd all get banned
each other's trust.
at some point in time or another.
It may be the case.
They'd be like, "No, you people can't have accounts anymore."
We will see. But we did have a discussion this morning about the topic in which we're discussing today, which for me is a topic about freedom of speech. For Bruce, it's a topic about mental health. And for Jenna, well, Jenna just
I
does.
think it's-
Jenna just Curt all over stuff.
I'm the only one who's not a doctor, so
You're booking. You're a good
I'll
grounded
be
you.
the people's person.
You'll be the champion
If that's a
of
thing.
carnal knowledge.
Yes. Whatever that is. It sounds
I'm not
biblical,
going
but
to say. See, there's this dark part of my soul that triggered from way back. I'm gonna keep that.
where should we start this fight?
I don't know.
We
I'm
can
not
have
done
a
with the
conversation.
Valentine's thing.
It's
There's
a
some other.
discussion. It's not a fight.
This is also the anniversary of the Parkland shooting in Florida.
It is.
It has been 1
Valentine's?
year.
I remember that.
And
That's why all the David Hogue stuff was popping up on my feed.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it has been 1
Okay.
year. NPR and Up First, those who listen to the show know that Rob and I religiously listen to Up First on
missed it
NPR.
this morning.
We like NPR to the tune that we criticize NPR when they get off kilter. I thought they did a good job this morning of outlining the advocacy efforts post-Parkland shooting from some of the students like David Hogg. But then they actually talked about another student who lost his sister in the shooting, and he talked about how it hasn't changed his family's perception on the Second Amendment and ownership of ARs or
Like,
semi-automatic
what was his
rifles.
position before? I missed it this morning.
That he talked about how he and his sister used to love to go shooting together, and how she learned to shoot, and as a family they shot, and she was killed in the Parkland shooting. And it gave a perspective of somebody who says, "Listen, we were affected by this tragedy too, and we don't want to gut the Second Amendment."
Right.
So NPR did a really good job this morning of saying not everybody is seeking change. What they did say was everyone is seeking conversation. They also outlined a lot of criticism for the director of schools in Parkland, who's currently the governor of Florida, DeSantis, has launched a grand jury investigation into whether or not he, as a director of schools, has responded timely with regards to school security subsequent of that event.
Yes.
Because he's got some criticism from
like
parents.
after that,
Yeah, some of the parents are saying that he's been MIA and unresponsive post-tragedy,
As
both
governor?
both in compassion for the victims' families and in action on security. So the governor's investigating.
they had okay.
Go ahead.
Going back to my memory, they had security at the time, but was it a sheriff's officer or was it the school security that was hiding in
I
his
think
car?
the criticism is what he's done since. in
Okay,
the
so
past
this
year.
isn't what the stuff leading
It
up
was
to the event. This
the
is
cop that's inside the school, the SRO, that didn't go inside of the school, right? Or the guard shack guy. That's who you're talking about. It wasn't the interventor.
that's not what this is about. That's
No,
about-
from what I understand, the grand jury is a general investigation into the due diligence of the director of schools
after
after
the
this shooting.
So whether or not it was
Whether or not
investigated properly.
whether or not he has taken the appropriate action to
to
so
fix
whether or not he
issues
stepped up
to
security.
Correct.
secure the school.
More so than what it was before.
Right. To address the issues.
That's the criticism. The criticism is twofold: that he hasn't shown much compassion to the victims' families in regards to concern, and that concern has subsequently led to inaction
in beefing up security.
Now what? Okay, I now this is based just on my understanding of schools. My wife's a principal, and so I know kind of what their security measures are like. And they've got the metal detectors, they've got the security guard, the doors are locked. I mean, it's a pretty secure facility. So, what was the expectation? Like, what was security like before? It sounds like
That's like a big argument. Is people think that we argue.
Yeah, this
so
is the
much
cop
over
that
it
ran
that
away,
people
right?
Never do anything.
that's what
That
I'm
is
saying.
the
That's what
cop
I'm saying.
that ran
But
away.
you
The
said
cop.
you said this was after that. This isn't taking that into account. This is this.
Well, he's
post
talking about the
stuff.
director of schools.
I don't have, and I think the governor doesn't have, an intimate knowledge of what has and has not been done. I think
But the governor.
that's why they're looking into
But the
it.
governor's the one that's.
Has launched it, yes.
Oh, the governor's launched the investigation into. Okay, I got mixed up. I thought you. All right.
Okay, so what I don't like about this Parkland thing, which, I mean, it's sad and terrible, but I feel like the issue that came out of all of these kids dying is the guns. But remember when we were in high school and it was the Columbine shooting? I don't know about you. You grew up Church of God?
You were in high school.
No,
Darren?
I grew up in an independent church.
Okay, so at Winterfest...
Yeah, we were. 96.
Do you remember when the Columbine
wasn't in-
parents and students
Okay.
toured?
Yeah, I was in high school.
They went across the nation and toured, and their entire message was about life. Live the best life that you can. Be a good steward.
Well,
my daughter was a Christian. Like it was
there
a very
was-
loving.
yeah. Cassie.
They devoted their lives to.
Flyleaf wrote a song about it called Cassie. There was... Columbine was a little different. Now, all of these school shootings are in their own
Right.
way. There's no cookie-cutter approach to
But it was
how
more of a
people choose
celebration
to
of
perpetrate.
life when it was over, not guns.
Well, a lot of
guns.
it had to do with the victims that were singled out, right? The two assailants went in and targeted Christians. So the remaining families, so many of them were Christian families who felt a greater call for this and exposure to talk about their religiosity and faith. So that's understandable.
And,
that hasn't necessarily been the case with every shooting since then.
Right.
So if that's not your driving factor in life, sure, your debate's going to be a little different.
Right.
So let's just take the nightclub shooting in Orlando. Out of that, not only emerged an issue about guns, but about hate
Right.
for alternative sexual lifestyles. So there's some consistency to the fact that who is targeted and victimized. We ask why they were targeted and victimized. And
I just think it could be more positive. Like people could, like the nightclub thing.
you
for
think
instance.
shootings could be more positive?
No, I think
I'll
that.
rephrase that. I know what you mean. But
No,
that's
I think that every time something bad happens in your life, you try to spin it to make it positive. What can I do to fix the situation for the future, or what can I do to learn from this lesson? So I just think that when things like that happen, people should go out and say, look for this in a nightclub, or make sure you're not so drunk that you don't know what's going on, or here are places that you would hide. Here's things you can do to keep safe. Like I think it should be an educational thing, not a blame thing. Like as soon as the event's over, like that's the annoying.
But
thing
we're
to
in a
me.
blame society.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, that's where we are, right?
Well, and sometimes
We're gonna get
in
into
a lot of
that.
these in a lot of these cases, in a lot of these cases though,
Yes,
the
we
person
are.
in a lot of these cases the person who was responsible dies in the process.
A lot of times,
And
yeah.
so there's the individual that society would ordinarily be unleashing their vengeance on through the court system isn't there to have it done, so they look for someplace else to vent that. And so it appears not.
Right,
I'm sure,
there's
it's not,
no
I'm sure it's not a
justice.
universal thing, but it appears that a lot of times they want to vent
People
that on
seek
the Second
justice
Amendment.
first. Yeah, that's true.
Well, and the concern with seeking justice is, and this is part of our discussion today. I had a professor once in my master's program, which was in public policy, right? Say, from a policy perspective, justice is a myth, but that you cannot create policy to capture an emotional sense of completion. That to just means to justify, to bring something back to where it was, right?
Right.
That's the core of the word. And that justice in and of itself is not always reconciliatory, all right? Big word, bingo, right? But it doesn't reconcile itself. So you never find a murder victim's family say, because this guy was caught and executed, I feel like I'm justified, my
Right.
life is restored. So really, our legal system is motivated by as much vindication as anything else. I want to be vindicated.
Right.
We use vindictive as a really negative term, but here's the root of that. I want to be vindicated. That something was done wrong to me. I need vindication
So
on
the,
it.
the wrong was somehow made right. And then
So
put
to
that in.
say, what's just and what's not just is a slippery slope, because there really is no justice. There is no, what we call justice to a great degree is just getting vindication.
Or accountability.
Well,
But in this case, like I said, a lot of these shooters are dead by the time, so the accountability isn't there for somebody to. There's not
that's
there's
right.
not somebody
but see,
to hold
when
accountable.
we talk about blame, though, we're in a culture now that blames more than the assailant. We're getting to the point where it's not just the person who took the action that's responsible. It's anybody else I want to tie to that. So in Parkland's case, we want to tie the NRA to it. We want to tie the politicians who supported the NRA to it. We want to tie the gun manufacturers to it. We want to tie the superintendent of schools for not providing security to it. We want to cast blame. We want to, because we can't get vindication from the shooter necessarily,
They
we're
want to
going to
get
get
it from
vindication
somewhere.
from somebody else.
And I actually understand that a little bit, because all of those people could improve what they're doing for future situations. Like the school system could make it safer. They could hire security guards who don't
Well,
run and hide.
but
Like,
here's the
just
thing.
different
Yeah,
things
but
like
when
that.
does it
Realistic,
stop?
I was gonna say,
Right.
realistically, there's only so much the schools can do.
It's on the opposite side of this argument on this.
They can be. I mean, there is the potential for negligence, but then there's also how far do you go? Do you go to where you have a fully armed, fully staffed group of mercenaries patrolling the halls
Right.
to make sure that nothing happens? I mean, most schools will have, or at least from my understanding, I know our schools around here have SROs. I know my wife's at the schools down in where my wife teaches. They have SROs that are there. They're officers on campus, and they lock the doors. They're metal detectors. They wand the students as they come in to make sure they're not armed and they're not bringing stuff in. So I mean, but at what point do you say, okay, this is reasonable? Because even with all of that, there's still the potential for somebody to come on the campus and do something.
Oh, yeah.
Even with all of the reasonable accommodations that you can make, it's possible for somebody to come on and get past these things and still do something. So at what point do you draw the line and say, okay, this is reasonable? And that, it seems like that's where the debate starts happening. Is they're wanting the people who are understandably hurt and understandably emotional and understandably wanting some form of vindication. It seems like when you can't get that from the one who should be held accountable, you go
Right.
after.
Especially when it's a situation where you think someone should have noticed. Like, was it the guy at Parkland who had, he had been in a mental institution and he was still granted a gun? One of the shootings.
Was
Well,
it,
no, it
was
was
that
found
the
that-
one where the police had been at his house?
Well,
and
they did find that there was failure by the FBI.
Right.
The FBI's internal investigation said, we had some reports on this and we didn't take action. So there have been those instances. But when we talk about this issue of blame, though, that's the slippery slope, because who decides, right? And we yield on who decides. And so is it the NRA? I mean, that's obviously
And
the
how do you
hog
measure it?
kids' big champion. Is the NRA's bad? I'm going to go to Harvard and I'm going to destroy the NRA and every politician that's ever supported the NRA because the NRA killed my classmates.
Right.
But then you have this other kid over here who says guns aren't to blame. I'm from a family that sees value in guns, and this person did a bad thing.
Right.
And sure, let's have conversations about mental health. Let's have conversations about grief. Let's have conversations about how we can stop it. But the problem with blame is victims, especially, don't quite know who to blame in the midst of emotion.
well, emotions
So
aren't
we were
rational.
talking about this before the show in regards to suicides related to school bullies, right? So I interviewed one of the directors of the Suicide Prevention Network, and I asked him the key question because it's the buzz, right? And I did this for the I Reckon podcast. For those who want to hear that episode, you can get it on the I Reckon. It's still posted, okay? I said, does bullying, is it a factor in teen suicide? And he said, we constantly find that even though parents blame bullies, blame school systems, blame these things, that it's not a significant factor in what led to the suicide of a child.
Right.
That there are so many other factors that lead to this, much of them at home, But there's this inclination nowadays that I don't want to be responsible for the pain that my loved one takes on. So if my child committed suicide, and I know this is a tough issue for a lot of people, but if my child committed suicide or my child did a bad act, I don't want to be the one responsible. You know, I remember a video of a kid getting convicted of something, and his father stood with him in the sentence. And they asked him, "Why did you stand with your son?" He said, "Because I'm partly to blame for this.
Right.
You know, I feel responsible as a father that
raised
my
him."
kid is coming." Yeah, we're seeing less and less of that. Instead, we're seeing people say it's not my fault. Even on things that aren't necessarily actionable, culpable, right? So we know now that a lot of the anti-vax movement wants to cast blame on vaccinations for autism when we know your genetic makeup has more to do with whether your child has autism, but it's hard for you to swallow that, wow, I somehow contributed to this scenario. You didn't do anything, but your genetics had a lot to do with it. It's hard for people to say, "No, this is me." The people who do say this is me often go to the extreme. They take all the blame, right? We've seen this. We've seen a mother take all the blame for something that happened to their child, or a spouse take all the blame, or a parent take all the blame. And the truth of the matter is, everything's much more complicated than we give it credit for. But the blame game in emotion, what we do know is in these emotional states, we don't really make good decisions as victims or society.
Well, it's because emotions are irrational. They shut down reason for short periods of time. And the higher the emotion, the less likely there's going to be reason involved. We've got to find that balance because the emotion also provides us the impetus to actually go out and fight.
Yeah, it's a catalyst.
Some of these fights need to happen. Some of these arguments need to happen. But we can't let the emotion overshadow the reason.
Right. Well, if
And
things
that's
keep
where we got
happening,
to find the balance.
Right. If things keep happening, I think people should say, well, you were to blame, you were to blame. It is multifaceted, and these people need to be able to reassess what they do to make it better. So, I mean, I don't think it should be judged criminally a lot of times, but I think that you should say, you know, the school system should have done better, the SRO should have done better, and all these people could
And see,
reassess
that's where I
do
start.
better.
Okay, so when we say should have done better, I would like to know first what was in place. Now, the example that we've been using is the Parkland, and there's been so many of these shootings that I might get this mixed up, but the officer was in his car and didn't go in to assist when it happened. So at that point, the school had provided an officer. They had provided security measures. The security measures broke down.
Right.
And so I don't see how that would necessarily be negligence on the part of the school when they provided it.
We don't know. I think, we'll see what this investigation turns up. But I think a year later is a good chance to be looking back in a more rational position than we were.
Yes.
Ben hit me online about justice is not a myth
What?
and punitive. But you used the term punitive there. He said punitive measures are taken law not done out of vindication. I'm referencing what a professor said about justice being a myth. But even if my children, he used an example, if my children broke a rule in the house, if my child shattered a piece of china, because I punished them doesn't justify the china. It doesn't bring the china back.
Right.
That's what justification is. It is punitive. They are punished. So there has been some vindication toward some vindication towards holding them to account. So I agree with your holding people to account, and our system does that. But I've never met a victim who felt justified in the end.
Who felt
No one can replace, nothing can
who felt
replace a
completed
child.
Who
or
felt
have
complete,
yes, yeah,
never have.
Yeah.
They may feel vindicated, but they don't necessarily feel whole again. And that's really what justice implies and what justice is. We call it justice, but the reason I bring that up is if you're seeking completion, if you think on the other side of a conviction that there's peace and everything's okay, that's just not what we find.
I mean, you might not find completion or fulfillment or wholeness necessarily, but justice also kind of has a facet to it that is balance. That part of what you're doing is bringing the scales back into the balance,
Right.
back into
And I
balance.
think that's
Well,
a mental.
and so
I think
it's
that's
not
got more
necessarily-
to do with deterrence.
That's not
Right.
necessarily vindictive so much as our actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences result in like these Parkland shooting. The kid went in there and his actions would have needed to be balanced. He would have needed to have paid the cost for that. Now he paid in the ultimate cost because he ended up dying in the situation. Which makes me wonder if he had survived and been tried and convicted and sent to prison and started serving his sentence, would the same emotional outrage have been leveled at the NRA, leveled at the school? Because
I think so.
In
No,
that
I
price
case,
wasn't
in
paid.
that case,
Never let-
he would have
you
been
know-
he would have been held accountable. So there would have been an emotional event.
Obama's former chief of staff said, "Never let a good Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste." Right?
Well, okay.
So there are too many of those
When
people who
you've
are
got that-
always going to take over that.
But I'm talking about the
from
victims.
A victim's
I'm talking about from
perspective,
the
yeah.
victims.
So let's use that example of me punishing my kids for doing something in the house. I punish them to prevent them from doing it again. Right? We punish in society the perpetrators with the expectation that to some degree deters other people from behaving in a like manner. Correct?
So the
our
punishment
real
is a
goal is
deterrence
preventative.
to
Our real goal-
prevent it from happening again.
the best thing we can get out of a vindication in a sentence or someone being held accountable we'll never get back what we've lost. What we
Right.
get and what victims do find solace in is maybe this will never happen again. So I've been working on a podcast now with the family of a victim who's still going through some of the process of losing their son. And that is absolutely where they've turned their life post this tragedy, is towards making sure this doesn't happen to other people.
Right.
That if there's something that their son's death represents, is it represents both a punitive and a rehabilitative process that can be a light in other situations, and hopefully this won't happen again.
Right.
Well, and
So
that's
that's something we can
actually a
look
very
to.
common reaction to tragedy. I've worked with people in the past who lost loved ones in situations where there wasn't really the loved one was mostly responsible. They were. I can't go into too much detail because of the nature of how I came across this, but it provided the family didn't have that. There wasn't somebody. It was an accident, but it was a preventable accident, and so they then channeled all of that
To
emotion
education.
Yeah.
into
I
providing
think that's
education.
the healthiest thing to do for both them and other people.
Well,
situation.
people feel like
Mentally.
it makes the loss matter. And so
Right.
I think to wrap up the Parkland discussion, that's where we kind of look, is we're looking back and saying, what have we learned? If we feel like that you've learned that the NRA is evil, I still think you haven't learned anything.
Right.
I think what we've learned is there has to be some
Because
attention to
that's a
security
shallow-
protocols.
But then you
we're
come
learning
to the point,
some of the same lessons over and over.
like
too.
when you have like the kids that are still a year later saying, I'm going to go to Harvard and I'm going to destroy the NRA.
I'm glad they're passionate about something,
Well,
but-
here's my question. If this is the same spot where they were a year ago, what growth has happened? What has been there? Because this can become an emotional cancer. This can be something that can
Right.
eat away at them and turn
And
them-
do they feel
I
the
mean,
same way? Because they may have been angry that day because their friends had just been killed. So do they feel the same way?
Yeah. So some of my question is, are these kids actually? Is somebody actually helping them? Is somebody actually providing? Are they? And
That
I
should
would-
be a
I would hope
mandatory.
so.
and are they participating? Because you
yeah.
can provide it, and if people
Right.
don't utilize it, it
I would hope so, and I think that it's appropriate at points like a year later to look back and reflect. I think probably some better policy might come out of that. Look towards other elements of policy we've grafted over the years, and we seem to come to a better place once we get some distance from the emotion, i.e. September 11th. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? We look and we say, the Patriot Act kind of was a bad idea. And it took us a while. But in the moment, everybody voted for that. Everybody voted to go into Afghanistan. Everybody voted to go into Iraq. We were
Do you think
angry.
we're going to
we
feel
were
the same
upset.
way about the wall?
I don't know.
But
Again, I'm
the
just
thing
ready
is,
to
though,
build
they've
it
been
now.
talking about this since the '90s.
The wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wall's not a new debate.
This is not new. This is
The
you know,
vitriol
Donald Trump has
behind it and
turned
what it represents
Yeah.
is somewhat new with regards to that. But
Yes.
I don't
this
know.
is not.
We'll see what happens with the wall. So good segue. If you were angry with the discussion about Parkland, you're really fixing to get angry because we actually got some dissentment on this panel and in the Man Up
Team
family.
Bruce or Team Adam and Jenna.
This morning in our discussion thread for show prep, man, there's a lot of disagreement in the Man Up family about this particular situation. I posted an article of a young lady who, at the age of 17, in a text exchange with her boyfriend at the time, encouraged him to commit suicide. Very aggressively said, just, do it, do it, do it, do it,
100
do it,
plus
do it.
texts.
Yeah,
to
do
her
it.
own boyfriend, which to me is kind of odd.
Yeah.
That they're still in a relationship and
Well, there may have been a fight. We don't know the circumstances surrounding. At least I don't. I can't say
just
that I know
know
the
that they were in
circumstances.
a relationship.
Yeah, I can't. I can only and I preface all of this. If somebody has information that I just haven't read yet, all of my stance, which apparently is the controversial one, is based
No,
on
you had plenty of support.
is based.
You're not alone.
Is
You're
based
not
on
alone.
my understanding of what I read and my trust in that it was accurately reported.
Well, here's the full story. She was convicted of manslaughter and will serve some time, 15 months. She didn't get the full sentence, but the
12
judge
of
and the
which was
court
time served.
held her accountable for the death of this young man who took his own life by carbon monoxide poisoning. Locked himself in his car, pumped the exhaust in there, and killed himself. So it wasn't necessarily... I bring that up because oftentimes shooting yourself is a very quick decision, but to remain in the car,
Long
Yes.
enough.
really shows some
And to
determination
not
there.
block someone who's texting you these angry things is another
Well,
clue in this
but
breakout
she
game.
was convicted. So we posted this, said we're going to talk about it tomorrow, and I said openly, I feel this isn't an issue of a debate over suicide or right and wrong or even a justice. It's a debate over freedom of speech and whether or not texting and speaking, to what degree do we honestly believe in freedom of speech, even when we hate it. I will say, the disagreement on the Man Up panel and in the Man Up family is not that this girl's a piece of trash.
Yeah, she's a piece of trash.
Okay? We all believe, none of us have any sympathy for
Our
this
starting
girl.
ground is we all
Yeah.
agree that this girl is a horrible
She's a
human being.
mean
A
girl
horrible
and
human
she's
being.
a terrible person.
We all agree that she did something wrong. We disagree whether she did something criminal. And I made the statement that this is a slippery slope because what she said, in my opinion, is protected speech.
Right. Except for, I think that she could be held liable for harassment because I think after you send maybe 3 text messages, unless he didn't tell her to stop, then you're under harassment and you can,
But then,
you
you're,
can
but
get
then you're
charged
still,
for
but
that.
then you're still, your harassment resulted in the death of. Okay, hold on. Let's lay out the.
But if
we're
he
getting,
didn't-
we're branching off before we get to
but
the.
before we get into it, because I don't
Yeah.
want our listeners to deviate down, because there's a lot of places we can go with this.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I want to
rabbit
talk
trails.
about where we truly disagree as a panel.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to discuss that. I made the statement that it's protected speech, that unlike a bomb threat or unlike threatening to shoot the president, this girl did not threaten to do anything. She simply said, go jump off a bridge, do it, do it, do it, do it, kind of thing.
No,
And
I
she
didn't- I
meant-
didn't-
and
And
I
then she
believe
said, like,
didn't-
and
pull
I
the
believe
trigger.
I believe she meant it
Yeah.
based on what I've said, but what my interpretation of her speech shouldn't be evidence in a court hearing. And it was in this case, and this girl got convicted because some other people interpreted that what she said was bad. Now, I eventually think this gets overturned because I think someone's going to make the argument freedom of speech means the freedom of nasty, dirty speech. And as
Right.
long
But
as
there's
you're
a-
not threatening, as long as you're not assaulting
But there's
someone.
a difference. There's a difference between I hate this or you're dirt or you're a piece of trash and go kill yourself.
But why didn't he break up with her? Why
What's
didn't he
the
block
difference?
her? Why?
Why
The
is
difference.
it-
The
why
difference
is
is
it
if you've got
stop?
if you've got somebody who is depressed and suicidal, and they tell you this, and then you spend 100+ texts telling them all the reasons why they should go ahead and do it, I do not see a difference between that and finding somebody who's on a bridge and saying, yeah.
But at
and
what
pushing 'em.
point does he say, stop texting me, or he blocks her, or he doesn't answer the phone, or he breaks up
I
with
can't
her?
speak.
Why does
I can't
he
speak to
continue?
this guy's ability to do it. My son knows how to block people on the phone. I don't know how to block people on my phone.
Turn your phone off. I mean, call Verizon. Say, hey, someone's harassing me.
If
Call
this
the
is
cops.
if this is the person that
let
he has
this
reached
happen
out
to
to,
him.
he reaches out to somebody who apparently he's in a relationship with, who he trusts, and yes, she may be mad at him, but he reaches out to her. He says, you know what, I'm just so depressed, I'm so over it, I'm going to kill myself. And then she spends 100 texts saying, well, then this is why you should do it.
But I don't
And then-
understand why
and
he
then
let it
does
go that
And then he
far.
does it. That she didn't pull the trigger, but she was a part of the process.
But if he wasn't
Again.
already messed up, why would he let her take it that far? Why would he let her send 100 text messages?
Because mentally ill people, when people are sick and they are in the thick of depression,
so that means he was
they don't
already.
see.
Okay,
So he was
this-
already
but
mentally ill.
Emotion, and rationality is out the window at
So
that
then
point.
it's not her fault.
Both of y'all's discussion right now is part of the problem. We're debating things we don't know.
But
we're placing our perception on what he should have done or he could have done and what she could have done or shouldn't have done, and not looking at the facts.
And the facts are, she had 100 texts telling him to kill himself.
But she did
and
not.
And then he did it.
But she did not assault. She did not threaten to do something to him, and she did not take action to do something to him. So here's my point. Even though I have no sympathy for this girl, just because she said do it, all it takes is someone else, because you value that language. You consider that language to be malice, right? That language to be of malintent. But there are some people in society who consider the language of a pastor in the pulpit saying homosexuality is wrong, adultery is wrong, you will be punished for it one day by your Creator, as language of malice. And all it takes is those people being the judge and those people being on the jury.
And there is a difference.
And your pastor gets locked up. The only difference is you think
there is a difference
that this is
between
bad.
saying this action is wrong and go do this.
But she still had no
if
contact.
that pastor from the
To
the
you,
pulpit,
there's a difference,
If the
Bruce.
pastor from the pulpit says you're a homosexual, that's wrong, go kill yourself. That's different than saying there's
not-
judgment coming.
You're not
He's more of an
answering. You're not debating my
authoritarian
point. Do you
than a
disagree that there are people out there who consider that language malice?
There are people that consider that
Do
language
you
malice.
think their opinion is worth less than yours in what regards malice?
I'm not saying malice.
You did. You
No,
said because
you said malice.
No,
what I said
you-
was she told she.
I'm
he-
describing what you said. What would you call it? Put
He
your
said,
own label
He
on it.
said an action. He said, "I'm going to kill myself." She said, "Go do it."
Okay, and you said that her words were what?
Criminal.
Criminal.
How is
Do
that?
you not agree that there are people in
What's
society?
the definition of manslaughter?
No.
No,
Answer my
no.
question.
You answer mine.
No.
Stop. No, you.
Let me
You.
Google.
You
No,
are. You are.
answer
You
the
are.
question,
You are
Bruce.
trying. You're trying to follow. You're trying to follow an irrelevant path. What's the definition of manslaughter?
Hold on, I'm gonna.
It's to contribute to the death of someone else. Actionably contribute.
That does not
Actionably
qualify as
contribute.
murder.
Okay.
If she had pulled the trigger or she had locked him in the car, that would be murder. But she didn't.
Okay.
So she did not
I
qualify for
answered
murder.
your question. Answer mine. What's the definition of free speech?
The free speech is the ability to say whatever you want so long as it is not harmful to somebody else.
No, what does the Constitution say? You made up a definition. What does the Constitution say about free speech?
Let's look it up.
What is look it up. Go for it. You've still yet to answer
We've been
my
doing this
question.
since 7
Are there
a.m.
not people who believe that
okay.
the language from the pulpit
Are there
is
laws,
malicious
all right,
and contributes
all right,
to
are
the
there
death
laws
of-
on the books that you can be convicted of a crime for your words?
for words?
Are there laws
for
on
your
no.
threats?
Are
Yes.
there laws on the books that
For
your
your threats.
words can result in criminal
For your
actionability?
threats.
And so her words resulted in someone's death. Her words
You're-
landed her
you're
in a situation.
generalizing. There
Her
are
words-
laws that say if you threaten
How
to
do
do
you
something,
determine?
it's assault. If you threaten to do something, she did not threaten to take
Here's
action.
the thing. I don't see how you determine that her words were responsible for the murder unless she was holding
It
him
wasn't a
captive.
murder. Hold on,
Or
it wasn't a murder.
Right, his suicide.
was a
Unless she was
suicide.
holding him captive or she was his parent who had control over him or it was some cult-like behavior. I don't see how someone telling you to do something and you doing it could be
Okay.
I'm
Attributing
still waiting
to
on the definition
suicide.
of free speech since
on.
you had to look it up. Let's go to Google for our
All right.
life
So
answers.
hold on. I'm looking it up.
Let's do it.
Now, we want me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, read the First Amendment.
Okay. Oh well, hold
Do
on.
you want
This-
Siri to do it?
Yeah. That's
Read it aloud for all of our viewers and listeners.
Siri, what is free speech?
So it says,
Okay, I found this.
Oh, gee, thanks, Siri. The principle that supports the freedom of an individual or community
All right.
to articulate their opinions and ideas without fear of retaliation, censorship, or legal sanction.
hold on. I'm trying to pull up the exact wording, but
Am I allowed to have the opinion that you should kill yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Am I allowed to have that opinion in the United States? Does that make me a dirtbag? Probably. Absolutely. Does it make me a very evil person? Yep. Should I be subject to consequences? Sure. As far as social consequences,
Right.
civil consequences, is it protected under the First Amendment? I want you to read it aloud,
Congress
Bruce.
shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Okay.
That does not give me the ability to tell her to go kill herself.
The Constitution doesn't give anyone
You
any
can say
ability.
anything you
it
want.
prevents government from taking the natural ability away. You have the ability to have the opinion
You can have the
that
opinion,
someone,
but
and
just,
you can articulate it.
But you cannot.
Yes,
but
you
you
can
can't. But
articulate it.
there are also the
You
laws.
cannot.
The laws also prevent you from doing other things with your words. There are laws on
that
the books
are
Give
actionable.
us some more examples
You
of that.
cannot threaten someone. You cannot place in someone fear because you say you are going to do something. Had this girl said, "If you don't kill yourself, I'm going to come kill you," that would be manslaughter.
Right. I think so, too.
Because she was threatening to do something. That's what the laws on the books say. This is the occurrence where someone is being convicted for an opinion that they articulated. Now, if your opinion articulated is not protected under freedom of speech, regardless of what it is, we are in a very, very bad place. And people, all of you who want to say it's an incompassionate view, the Constitution is not a document of compassion.
Right.
It is a document of protection of innate and natural freedoms that we possess. It does not give us authority or power. It prevents government, a judge, a jury, and other people from taking it away, which is exactly what occurred in this case. I think it's going to get overturned.
Okay, but there is one thing at the end, and I don't know. I know we haven't talked about it yet. I don't think that she should be sentenced for manslaughter. But at the end, she was on the phone with him as he was killing himself, and listened to him die without calling 911. I think that's truly wrong. I don't know if it's criminal. I know it's criminal if you're an adult and it's a child.
That right there is part of the problem, is that she did not do anything. She knew this was happening. Mm-hmm. There's no way around it. She knew this was happening, and again, minor or not, you know it's wrong.
Well, then we're getting like in Good Samaritan laws. But Chris, you asked, did Charles Manson go to jail for? He told them to go kill people. He told them to go kill other people. He told them to go kill other people.
And that's what she did.
Provided them the means and was in a cult atmosphere.
And how is that? How is that different than what she did? She took somebody who was
at a cult
just because her target was him, and she was telling him to kill himself.
But he was
How is
actually
that different than-
brainwashing. He was in a brainwashing situation with these people.
But that could be argued for her too. In her situation, she told him, but he has to act against his self-interest in regard to that.
And somebody who is in a depressed state is mentally not capable of making
But it's not
rational
someone
And a
else's
17-year-old
fault that
girl
they're
is
in a
not
depressed-
capable of assessing the mental health of her boyfriend like you are, Bruce.
They were both kids. That's
They're
true.
not.
It's not a matter. It's not a matter.
I'm concerned
not for this girl.
If she had been someone like me, she wouldn't be serving
But
a 2.5 year commuted sentence. She'd be serving 20 years.
But it's not my fault that you're in a depressed state. Like, that has nothing to do with me.
But you're right. The fact that he was in a depressed state may not have had anything at all to do with her. But what did have to do with her was he told her, "I want to kill myself." And then she spent 100 texts telling him why she'd do it, on the phone with him as he was doing it, and never once told anyone that this was happening. Not one time.
I mean, we
And
think
she
it's
is a
wrong.
It's not a
horrible
matter of being a
person.
horrible person. That's a criminal
absolutely
act.
I
a
don't think it's a
horrible
criminal
person.
That
act,
is a
but she
criminal
is a very
act.
terrible
And every
person.
Sunday, people walk into a church, and the pastor preaches and gives people
And-
guilt and conviction, and some of those people go home and they do bad things to themselves, and their families can come back and say, because you did these things in an environment where you were trusted, you should go to jail.
And if
now
they
we're
could,
on freedom of religion, now we're on freedom of speech,
if they could show
freedom of
where his
assembly.
exact words led to that, or he was in part of the process, which she was, then they would have a case.
So the other point of contention that we had in regards to this debate is we're back to the blame argument, just like with Parkland, when we were talking about Parkland. Who gets the blame? I said in my interviews with the Suicide Prevention Network, they said suicide comes by a multi-factor
And that is
situation.
absolutely accurate.
So when are we going to prosecute the other factors that led to this for him?
The other factors
When are
were
we gonna
present. The
prosec-
other factors were
when are
not
we gonna
present at the
prosecute-
time of it.
when were we-
She was.
When are we going to prosecute? But
I
it
think
led to
that
his
you
death.
can't-
When-
You said your definition. No, you went to definitions. You said your definition of manslaughter was contributing to the death of someone.
And that's what she did.
When do
at
so
the time
when
of
do we
the
charge
death.
the parents who neglected? When do we charge the employer that laid him off? When do we charge all of these other factors that
Right.
might have contributed to a suicide? Because you said by your definition of manslaughter, they should be in the courtroom right now.
It's not my definition of manslaughter. That's
When
the
do we do
definition
it?
of manslaughter.
So
I
when do
think
we
that
convict him?
mental
Are you ready to
health-
convict him?
I think that mental health is like a jar of stones, and you don't know which stone led to the suicide. You don't know how many stones are stacked in that jar. Like, there's no way to measure.
Again, we are at the point where
who
you're
did what.
talking about conjecture. There is no conjecture. She was present at the time of the death. She was on the phone with him as he died. She was present in the minutes and the hours leading up to his death, encouraging him to do it. So I want to know, what is the difference between Charles Manson commanding his people to go and kill somebody and her commanding her
I
person
just
to go
don't
kill
think people
somebody?
have
Hey,
that kind
listen.
of power
Just
over
because
you.
the target was himself
But how
and
can
not
someone
not
have,
some movie star.
How can someone else
Because
have that power
diminished.
over you?
It's diminished mental capacity, mental health. These people, he was not well.
So
he
you're
was
saying
not
a
capable of making a
17-year-old
statement.
girl should be able to assess mental diminished capacity?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
You've heard it just right here. A 17-year-old now is qualified to start taking clients to counsel you.
Now,
on your
first of all,
diminished
that
mental capacity.
you want cussing on the thing. You are taking that to an absurd.
I did. That's my bad.
Statement.
I did.
That was and you
I
know
took
it.
it completely.
I didn't know those big words, so
I'm guilty on that one. I want to say I'm very, very proud of Man Up Fanland right now. Chris, you guys. I know everybody's got opinions about this, but Chris, you're right. It's a tricky subject. And Ben, I actually kind of agree with what you just said online, that this probably is criminal negligence. I think the argument for
say.
negligence, I can buy it a little more because that's much more of a gray topic than manslaughter.
Even though she was a
manslaughter to
child,
me
too.
is not that gray. If you take action that contributes to the death of someone, so you throw tacks out in the road, they wreck, the car hits a pole, you're obviously responsible for that. I think you're in a slippery slope when you start using words. And I do think that the difference between Manson and the Jim Jones and those things like that, where these people were arguably in a kidnapped situation
Right.
with regards to the cult. They feared for their own well-being if they did not take action. And that's kind of the difference here. This guy didn't
Right.
fear for his own well-being.
Well, we don't-
They
He did it
feared
to
for their own
himself.
well-being.
we don't know. That again is getting into conjecture because we don't know.
Well, how can
We don't
you?
know the
Charles
nature.
Manson?
We don't know.
Yeah,
with,
that
with,
doesn't-
with
with him.
these,
No,
with
you're
these
right.
two, we don't know the.
It's like we know what Charles
We don't know
Manson-
the nature of their relationship. What we know is he was depressed. He was suicidal. He reached out to someone. That someone then told him to do it, and then was on the phone with him when he did. So it's not
That's
like
the hardest part for
It's
me,
not.
though.
It's
Yeah.
not a. It's not that this is just her words. It's not that this was just her text or her freedom of speech. She was on the phone with him instead of reaching out and saying, "Hey, this guy's in
Right.
the process of killing himself.
And this
Go
is what
get
I'm
him."
saying.
When
and
everything
this
in
keeps
a
bringing it
healthy
up too,
person
that
would say, "Call
she
911."
did take action that contributed to his death. And what I'm saying is, even though it seems so close right there, there's still reasonable doubt
Right.
that should exist in the courtroom, because it's still a leap
Very
to say what she did caused his death.
Right.
We don't know if at the last minute he remembered back to an abusive situation with an uncle when he was 5. And that was the catalyst. We don't know, but we're saying what she did caused it when we really don't know if what
But
she
all
did
we
caused
have,
it.
But at
all
the
we have
same
is the
point-
evidence of what she was
At
part
the
of.
same point,
That's right, and we
as a
don't know that it
psychologist-
caused it. The judge made he ascertained that and that's his job, is that his opinion that this caused that guy's death. But we really don't know, guys. You don't know.
But at the same
You don't
time,
know.
as a psychologist, do you not agree that she's mentally unhealthy? Because she can sit there and listen to someone die on the phone. She can tell someone to die over and over and over. She clearly has mental
She's
issues
a horrible
too.
person.
So I'm not sure that
Horrible person.
she could claim insanity because she sounds
You're
like
a
crazy
horrible
person.
person.
What we have here is two people
Both
who
mentally
who
unsound.
both have issues.
Right.
Just because you have a mental health issue doesn't protect you from conviction or prosecution.
That's true.
So again, dancing. I have to dance a line here.
You've been dancing
I
all day, Bruce.
routinely would say I spent 15 years doing mobile crisis, and we would routinely see people who had committed criminal acts. They would get help, and then they would face charges.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're diminished doesn't protect you from the charges. So yes, she probably does have some kind of issue that led her to a place where she could sit there. I mean, no rational people cannot sit there while somebody is killing themselves.
Right. But I'm thinking, they're both
And
kids.
so,
They
and
both
so
have
there,
mental
there
issues.
is there
I don't
is
think
there
that
is
it's-
mental. There she probably does have mental, and if she didn't before, so she certainly does now.
I have no compassion for this girl. I really
don't either.
None
I
whatsoever.
can have compassion for her and still expect her to answer.
I don't.
For not doing it, for not only not doing anything but being there as he dies.
I'm concerned about what's next. What this means for freedom of speech. What this means.
I'm concerned, but
in
not
that
as
capacity.
highly as you are. On
Yeah, I'm
that
very
level.
concerned because we're seeing more and more of it.
I'm more
right?
concerned
Okay,
with-
somebody just piped in that the legal
with
definition is
children fighting.
contribute to the death, not cause. That if the definition is contribute, what she did actually did
And
contribute.
it's so interpretive. So interpretive what contributes.
Because
what
you
else
can't say
contributes?
that it did
Are we going to go
right.
after those other contributions?
Right.
Your field says there's so many contributions to
there
that.
How
are a
can
lot-
you charge one if you are not charging
But
them all?
Go after him.
there is a big difference.
Let's go after the teacher, the
There's
coach
a big
that kicked
difference
him
in
off the
somebody
team.
10
Let's go
years
after
ago
him.
saying something. There's somebody 10 years ago says something that hurts your feelings, and you forget about it. But then 10 years later, you're in a depressed state, and it comes back to you.
But if you're already in the depressed state,
there has been a decade between the words and the action. There's not that case here.
But he
There
was
is
already in a
this was
depressed
immediacy,
state.
There's
and
still-
she pushed
still a
him.
leak.
He was standing on a bridge, and she pushed him.
See, now here's another thing. In
I'm
her
the kind of
text
person that
messages,
says no
she
one has
said
that power
she
over
kept
you.
saying the word fire, like shoot yourself. I think had she said you'd have been a little closer to proving cause had she said go sit in the car and turn on the
But it's
car
not even
and
a matter-
pipe the
and-
exhaust in. Yeah, you're getting a little closer. I still think there's a leap there. There's still reasonable doubt. But we're out of time on the show today. Talk 101.3 The Buzz WTNB Television. For all of you who have been wondering why I invited Dr. BS to be on this program today, he has proved why. He's held his own at the man-up table. He's manned up, even though I think he's
He
entirely...
did.
I don't think he's
Wipe
wrong...
the spit off my face. No, I'm just
I don't think he's wrong on mental health. I just think you're wrong on the First Amendment. That's
and
all.
a happy Valentine's Day.
Slippery slope. All right, guys. Thank you. Nothing but love on Valentine's Day. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing the sorority girl thing
What is
for a
this?
man-up
Happy
viewers.
Valentine's
It's
to
a
my
heart.
loves.
I guess mine was more of like a potato. All right, Talk 101.3 The Buzz, WTNB Television. We're out.